Okay, welcome everybody. This is our first Sunday in our how-to series, and we have Paul Palmer, resident knowledge of little of a lot of things, and Roger Yancey, resident knowledge of a lot of things and a lot of stuff. So Roger, he does a lot of our maintenance on our church vehicles, and we need somebody to help him kind of roll through some things, and who better than Paul Palmer to help him kind of take us through what it means to have some basic car knowledge. And so we're going to get started. You guys got a couple things you're going to tell us, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we're just going to go through some basics, things to look for when you're driving your vehicle around town, things to keep an eye on that if you don't keep an eye on them could leave you stranded or could cost you or your parents a lot of money. If you let them go too long and they get too bad. So we'll step inside the cockpit here and take a look at some of the lights, and then we'll pop the hood and check on some stuff under there.
So when you turn your ignition on, you're going to see dash lights, idiot lights come up. In this case it's seat belt, and just let you know the door ajar because the door is open. And when you crank it up, everything should go out. Of course, the door ajar light's not going to go out because the door is open. And over here, I actually have a problem with this car right now. The ABS light is on, and that's anti-skid braking system, anti-lock braking system. So I have to go get that fixed. That recently came on. I haven't dealt with it yet. So what the anti-lock braking system does is if you hit your brakes in the panic mode and you actually lock up, they stop and release and stop and release and stop and release like a dozen times a second. It's just like a blur, but it allows you to steer while you're stopping. Because if you lock up and you're steering, then your steering doesn't work because you just keep going, you skid. So the point is, when you have lights that stay on after they should not stay on, don't ignore them. Go deal with them. You can go to a service garage, and sometimes places like AutoZone or Advance Auto, those places will put a diagnostic tool on the car and let you know what that problem is, whether it's serious or not serious. So don't ignore engine trouble lights or other issues that pop up on your dash.
All right, good stuff, good information, good things to know. All right, we're going to pop the hood now, and then we'll check out what's going on underneath there.
Where do you go to pop the hood?
So every car today has got a release lever in here. It's got the hood symbol on it. See the hood up? You pop that, and that releases your hood. Then you go around, and there's typically another latch right under the top of the hood.
All right, so it was this little latch here is what you felt, and
exactly.
You just kind of feel it through the opening.
You kind of got to go stick your fingers in there, and you'll or take a look under here, and you'll find another thing that finally releases the hood latch, and then you're up and open.
So this car is equipped with these almost like a spring type mechanism here that holds the hood up. Some of the cars, there's like a little bar that's normally right here, and you'll find a hole where the bar goes, and the bar will hold the hood up. So there's something on every car that'll help hold the hood up, so when you're underneath there working, looking at stuff, it doesn't fall on your head. All right, so what are the important fluids and the ways that we check the important fluids here?
Probably the most important thing under the hood of a car is engine oil. And they all have a dipstick, and it says engine oil on it. It'll have some indicator. It may say something like this on it. So the intent is, you pull that out, and there'll be a level indicator on there, and it'll give you a safe range. And I just started this engine, so it's oil's all over the place. But if I had wiped this off, I would find oil down here in the safe range, and that's what you want to be looking at. And if it's too low, then you add oil. And you'll probably have a sticker inside your car that says when the next oil change is due.
All right, so that's how you check the oil, and if you figure out you need to add oil, how do you know what kind of oil to add, and where do you add it?
Virtually every car today, at the place where you put the oil in the engine, it'll tell you right there. It says engine oil, and it gives you an SAE number, Society of Automotive Engineers, what that stands for. And this one says 5W-30. And that's an indicator of the viscosity and the weight of the engine oil. And if you don't know, you can go to Jiffy Lube, or you can go to AutoZone or Advance and walk in, and they'll come out and they'll help you with that, and they'll sell you the right oil. But if you want to do it yourself, or read the owner's manual, should be in the glove box of the car. But it'll tell you, either the engine will tell you or that manual will tell you, here's what you need to put in there. And that, you take off that cap, and you'll want to have a funnel so you don't make a mess all over your engine, and you pour a quart of oil in there or whatever you need. Once you pour that in, then you check this again, maybe let it have a few minutes to run down and settle out. Check this again and see if it came up to the right level on the bottom of that stick.
Good stuff, good stuff. Besides the engine oil, what other things do we need to keep an eye on?
The coolant, liquid cooled engines, the coolant, there will be a storage bottle, like an expansion bottle. As the engine antifreeze water heats up, it expands and it comes up in this bottle. And then when it cools, it goes back out of the bottle and back into the radiator. So it says engine coolant. So that is typically a mix of antifreeze and water. Typically it's 50% water and 50% antifreeze. So it's kind of a reservoir supply here, and you check the level here. Your radiator also has a cap, but typically you don't need to mess with that anymore. You don't ever want to mess with it when it's hot. If your engine's hot, your radiator's hot, you don't want to take this off of here because it's pressurized and it can burn you and blast hot water across the engine, and you just don't want to mess with it when it's hot. You shouldn't have to mess with this hardly at all because you can do everything you need to do right here.
Good. How about brake fluid? Brake fluid, kind of important. You want to be able to stop your car.
It is. This is a reservoir for brake fluid. And you can see the liquid level in here. And there'll be an indicator on this translucent bottle that says, be in this range. It's kind of hard to read sometimes, but I'm nearly full, so I'm in good shape here. That hardly ever needs attention, but it's something that you want to glance at on a periodic basis. If you take your car into Jiffy Lube or a place like that, that's something they'll check, and they'll tell you if you need help, or you can do it yourself.
I know from time to time, if you're driving along, sometimes things will squeal or grind. How do you know if a squealing noise might indicate that you need to change something or get something looked at, like maybe a belt or something like that?
Yeah, sometimes that's kind of hard to figure out. Yeah. If you hear a screeching or a squealing or something under the hood, unless it's really obvious, and it's not always obvious for sure, but that's when you need to go find some professional help. If you're really adept at this sort of thing, or your dad is, or somebody else in your family is, that's fine. Most of us aren't, and the cars get so complicated these days that there's less and less that most of us can do. Okay. So if it's making noise you don't understand, go have a professional have a listen and figure that out for you.
Good advice.
One more thing here, the windshield washer fluid, they're all well marked. So the only thing that goes in here is the soapy water antifreeze mix that you squirt up on your windshield if you need to rinse off. So always keep that full or relatively full. You can buy windshield washer fluid anywhere, grocery store, Walmart, auto places, $3 for a gallon. Just keep some at the house and top that thing off every now and then.
Good stuff, good advice.
What about jumping a battery?
Yeah. From time to time, somebody may leave their lights on, may leave a dome light on or something, runs the battery down. You come back out from whatever you were doing, you try to crank it up and you get the or it just clicks. Good idea to carry around some jumper cables, but you got to know how to use them. You want to make sure that you hook them up right.
I have jumper cables in the trunk. Should I get those, and we'll take a look and show what that's all about?
Let's hook those up.
All right. These are good things to have. I use them far more helping other people than I do for myself. But you can't help anybody and you can't help yourself if you don't have them. So they're not expensive. Another thing you can get at Walmart or get at any AutoZone, Advance, O'Reilly, those kinds of places. And the purpose is if the battery in your car is dead, won't crank the engine. Sometimes you get in and you get surprised because it goes click, 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 chatter, chatter, and it's just not going to do the job. So if your car battery is dead and you've got a friend or another family car or whatever, you pull it up close enough to get within this length of distance between the batteries in the two vehicles, because we're going to be putting these on a hot battery and the other end on the dead battery. So the typical sequence here is red on the good battery that you're going to jump from. So let's assume that already happened. And then red to the dead battery, which in this case we're going to call this one dead. Then black to the ground on the hot battery. And then you take ground to a ground lug, typically away from the battery. Most of the recommendations are don't ground back to the battery. You want to get away from the battery in case there's a spark. You don't want that spark near the battery. So most cars today have a lug just for that purpose. I don't see it on this car, so I'm going to go to this spot right here, which is really heavy and would be a good ground position. So now if we were hooked to a good battery in another vehicle, this car would crank. That's the plan.
All right, how about tires? Tires are kind of important on a vehicle. What are some of the important things to keep an eye on with your tires? Because they're going to wear out over time.
How about if I crank a tire out where we can stick a
All right, sounds good. All right, so tires are another important part of the car. Every tire tread pattern may look a little different, but they've all got tread with these deep grooves in there. Help you grip the road in all kind of different conditions, sand, water, whatever the case might be that you're trying to drive through. But it's real important to keep an eye on these grooves to make sure that this tread isn't excessively worn. And one old trick that they tell you is to take a penny, and you see it's got Abraham Lincoln on there, and you stick the penny down in the groove, upside down. Abraham goes kind of head first down in the groove, and if the tire groove doesn't come up over his head, then you need to go get some new tires. So let's check this out. So you can see there, part of Abe's, if I can get his name right, part of Mr. Lincoln's head there is covered with the tread. So the depth of the tread is good. Also, you kind of look at the wear of the tread. It should be kind of even. If you've got it bald on one side or bald in the middle and you still got tread in other places, maybe a problem with either the tire pressure being too high or too low, or there may be some kind of problem with the alignment that you need to go in and get a professional to take a look at and see if they can get it corrected for you.
What about rotating the tires, Mr. Palmer?
All right, so rotating your tires is basically you kind of time it with maybe every other oil change is what I typically do. Is you'll take the tires from one position of the vehicle and rotate them, like the front tire here would rotate with the back tire. Some folks crisscross. It really depends on the type of tire that it is. Some of them have real unique patterns, like on my truck, it goes on one side or the other. So you just rotate it from one spot to the other. That way, if there is a little bit of something that's off with the suspension, you kind of compensate for it and you don't excessively wear your tire. Everything kind of evens out. Another thing is the tire pressure, which is equally as important, and it'll make the tires last longer. I may have a tire gauge in here. If I don't, I'm going to go get one and show you something else that's important to. Here we go. So, you know, $2 or $3, available anywhere, online, Walmart, any of the auto places I told you about. And keep one in your car or keep one in your house and where you know where it is, and don't ignore these. Ultimately, air will leak out of tires. It doesn't stay in there forever. So this shows that I've got 35 pounds in there, which is good.
And there's a number on the sidewall of the tire that says PSI max. That's pounds per square inch maximum cold. You don't want to do it after you just drove your car and got the tires heated up. But you want to know what the cold pressure is. And these tires say 36 pounds max. So I stay close to that max. And so that's why it read 35 just now. So the better attention you pay to tire pressure, the longer your tires are going to last, the safer you're going to be, and the better gas mileage you're going to get. Because a tighter tire with more air pressure rolls easier and more efficiently than a soft tire with low pressure. We'll take a look at spare tire so you know where the tire and the jack is. Yep. Cars are going to be different, but this one has what I call a toy spare, and it's down under here. So you can still have some usable trunk space. So these tires are smaller than the tires the 4 tires that are on the car right now, and they're only for wanting to get you from a flat tire to a tire shop. That's all it's for. There's a statement on there somewhere that says don't drive it more than 50 miles. It's a good thing to check the pressure on because it's in the trunk of your car or under your car and you forget about it. So you might be checking the 4 tires that are on the ground, but you forget to check the pressure in this one. Well, if you have a flat spare is not going to get you anywhere. So when you're occasionally, maybe not every time you check the rest of them, but occasionally put a gauge on this tire and make sure it's going to help you when you need help. Typically, the jack is going to be with it or under it, and that's the case here. So if you had to use it, you go after it. Been a long time since that came out of there. I'm not sure it ever came out of there. And there will be a tire tool with it to crank the lug nuts off the car. And there's instructions. If you do this, you're not going to remember this every time, but when you pull the cover off of that tire and you find out where this thing is, there's instructions that tells you how to do this. It's not something you're going to do often enough to remember, so you need to read that and do this properly. It tells you exactly where to put this. In this case, there's a spot under here, and you crank this. You crank this up. This is called a scissors jack. You crank it up, and it's going to raise this up to the point that it's going to lift your car. And it's got a certain spot under here that it needs to attach to, and you lift your car. You should also, and the directions will probably tell you, you want to go to another place on the car. You set the brake, go to another place, and block a tire just in case you're not on level ground. Because the last thing you want to have happen is this thing to roll while you got one wheel in the air. So to get to the lug nuts, typically, sometimes you may have to go uncover them. That's what this is for. They're really, really tight. You really got to crank on them, but you can get them off of there. I'm not going to go through all that today. But once you are in the air, break these loose. Take this one off, put that one on, put these lug nuts back on, and let the jack down and put everything away and go get your tire fixed. It's a fair amount of work. If you're not in a place where, if you're not a AAA member and you can't call a service truck and you got to do it yourself, you need to know how to do it yourself. It won't happen often, it may never happen, but it's certainly a good thing to know. Yep. Well, I would say the jumper cables are high on that list. If you ever did have to do the spare tire, Let me show you another thing I keep in this car. I call this a star wrench. And I keep one of these in each of my vehicles because cranking on this to break one of these loose with two hands is a lot easier and probably safer than the wrench that the car manufacturer gave you. This will work. To me, this works better.
All right. So the better wrench, the jumper cables, the tire pressure gauge that we used earlier, those are just a few of the basic things you want to make sure you keep in your car.
Let me show you what else I have in here, just by chance. We're talking about basic tools. So this is what I keep in here just for that purpose, basic tools. So, pair of pliers, a Phillips screwdriver, a straight screwdriver, adjustable wrench, and a set of hex wrenches or Allen wrenches. And that'll solve a lot of problems, just having those things. Something as simple as the pliers or the screwdrivers for something as simple as a hose clamp or a hose connection, possibly. You might not be able to get to it anyway, but these give you a chance to maybe solve your own problem. Just good things to have, and if you don't use them on your car, you may be in a situation where you're someplace where you need some basic tools, and that's a good starter right there.
I think one of the important things you can do is know your particular vehicle. Every truck, every car is a little bit different. We've kind of gone through some basics on a car here today, and they're all sort of similar, but everything is a little bit unique. So pop the hood, spend a little bit of time looking under there, understanding what you're looking at. Know where your spare is, where your jack is, because it may not be in the same location it is on this sedan. It may be different. So learn your vehicle particulars before you go off and hit the road.
And pay attention to the gauges on the dash. You know, some cars have more gauges than others. Temperature gauge, oil pressure gauge, probably the most important. You know, they show a normal range on them. If it gets out of that normal range, you need to go take care of it, and just don't ignore it for the life of your car and for your own safety.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you both for your time and for your wisdom and your knowledge. And I know this is going to be beneficial to everybody who watches it.
All right.
Cool.
Cool.
Hey students, thanks so much for joining us tonight for our Wesley Students online experience. I just want to remind you to make sure that you follow our Instagram right here, and then check out our YouTube channel up here so you can get updated information and content. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next Sunday.